Hello everybody, Bandit here, and today I'll be going over all advantages in Survivor and ranking them from best to worst in my opinion. Please bear in mind this is my personal opinion, so if you feel that I've said something that strongly contradicts what you think, perhaps state why in the comments. After all, that's what they're there for. The ranking will consist of 12 advantages ranging from Season 30 to Season 40 in regards to their original introduction. A variety of these advantages that have only had one appearance and others have had several appearances ranging from good to bad. In this list you'll see before you are the 12 advantages I'll be using in my rankings. These rankings therefore will not include the advantage menu from Edge of Extinction, the disadvantage in the challenge for Bendry, Bergen and Winners at War, immunity necklaces or immunity idols of any kind. This will include the regular idol, the overpowered idol, like we played after the votes are read, idols hidden at challenges, idols that when combined in code wrong create an overpowered idol, two-piece idols, and idols with a time limit such as the two trouble councils in Island of the Idols. My reasoning for this is because all these idol advantages are very similar and don't fit into this style of video. However, there may be a future video going through the changes in the history of the idol, so stay tuned for that. Back to the list, however, I'll be ranking these advantages from worst to best. Number 12. The extortion advantage. Newly introduced to the most recent season of Survivor, Season 40, Winners at War, the extortion advantage was found in the limbo lands of Edge of Extinction by Natalie Anderson and Parvati Shallow, both voted out of the game and hoping an advantage they could find to trade for fire tokens, the main currency of the season, would ultimately let them back into the game. When the tag team found the extortion advantage, I remembered watching in horror as they read aloud the punishment for their impending target. Ultimately, they picked Tony, forcing him to pay a monstrous 6 fire tokens for the ability to even compete in the immunity challenge and have a vote at Tribal Council. To put this into perspective, this is 6 times more expensive than the idol Sandra bought. At least that was an advantage. Tony had to give up everything he owned and had to borrow fire tokens just so that he wasn't screwed by 2 players already voted out and production's per choice of advantage. The fact Parvati and Natalie also seemingly had the ability to change the demand for the fire tokens could have locked Tony out of competing in the challenge and having his vote removed for an impossible price to pay. To add insult to injury, this happened at the final 9, a situation renowned in Survivor to be extremely fragile, with everyone needing their vote for a potential 5-4 or 4-3-2 vote plan. Tony was disadvantaged simply for being the best player and couldn't even get revenge for those that wronged him because they were on the different side of the island, semi in the game. This advantage is incredibly flawed and is quite frankly insulting the team would even put it into the season. In no way was Tony winning in this situation, and he had lost his vote and immunity. He was completely susceptible to being picked off, with no immunity necklace or vote to force people to think otherwise. Finally, this will be a recurring theme you'll find in my videos, but Edge of Extinction is a flawed mechanic in the grand scheme of Survivor. No one voted out should be able to determine the fate of someone so drastically that is still playing the game and has likely fought tooth and nail to not have their torch snuffed. The extortion advantage lies here at number 12, and hopefully will never return again. Number 11. Remove a juror. This one isn't as bad as the last one, since there's at least someone in the game affecting only one person already voted out of the game, but the remove a juror advantage is just a stupid idea. Granted, I get the idea the production needed something to fill in the time with on the season because there's shocking 3 medical evacuations on the season, but I would have rather have had a final 2 or something rather than a challenge resulting in being able to remove a member of the jury. Being on the jury is an important part of Survivor. Despite being voted out, you still have a key role in collectively establishing the winner of the season and the $1 million. Removing a jury member almost seems like production is spitting in their faces and making them seem obsolete. The whole idea of the social aspect of Survivor to ultimately garner the respect from the jury. That's why Russell Hantz gets no votes in Heroes vs Villains, because the jury don't respect him due to his social game. After Code Wrong, it felt scary as to whether the prior seasons would try to pull away more and more from the impact the jury had. Fortunately, that was not the case, and Code Wrong was the only season to have this advantage. It's even more important to note that Neil was the victim of this twist and became the first person in Survivor history to be medically evacuated at the merge, still make the jury, and then be booted from the jury. With this injury taking him out of the game, where he would have succeeded fairly due to his advantage of bonds with Debbie and Aubrey, Neil took his position as juror very seriously. To see such a screwed individual get even more kicked while they were down was tough. This entire segment was not to insult Michelle at all. In fact, given the advice, I think Neil, for her game, was the right choice, but that doesn't excuse the fact that this shouldn't have been an advantage in the first place. Number 10. The Idle Nullifier. The Idle Nullifier was an advantage newly introduced into David vs. Goliath and was founded by Carl when he drew the all-coloured buff and had to live on Exile Island. This idle nullifier allowed, when the correct name was written onto it, to kill a person's idol, turning them from immune to viable to receive votes. The problem with this advantage was that it wasn't announced prior to the season, and nobody knew such a thing existed, and so everyone assumed idols had their standard powers. Now, I will give credit to production at least acknowledging the amount of idols in seasons were getting rather over the top, and they needed nerfing somehow, but this really was not a good solution. At least now, idols that only work for two tribals or split idols solve that problem in more fair ways. Goliath Dan Reniger fell victim due to the idol nullifier, and despite reading the room correctly and playing the idol on himself, Dan still had his idol killed, and thanks to a vote steal from Nick, resulted in Dan being voted out. At the time, the backlash wasn't as bad as you might have expected. The David tribe were complete underdogs that season, and so outplaying the Goliaths with advantages they worked so hard to get for the second tribal council in a row was awe-striking. Dan proceeded to state on Twitter how he felt he was done dirty by production and wanted a second chance. This was nothing to the bold choice Island of the Idols made when it came to the final five. The idol nullifier made a return. DK Villain decided to crush everyone's dreams and got the idol nullifier by flipping a coin and caused Janet to get voted out at the final five, despite looking on track to make final three thanks to her having an idol and also force fire making existed at final four, which she was the best at between the final five contestants. Despite playing her idol, Janet was voted out unanimously when it was killed. This sparked a major uproar over the rationale of having the nullifier in the game. People even began to push Survivor to do more natural seasons with less advantages post season 30. In my opinion, the immunity idol nullifier should not exist, but unfortunately production seemed to disagree with it being in 3 of the 4 newest seasons of Survivor David vs. Goliath, Island of the Idols, and Winners at War. Idols now have a date when they expire, and this helps nerf them more and prevents cases such as advantage getting, which could be the only situations I could see production introducing this item into. I can see what they were doing with the idol nullifier, but that doesn't mean I necessarily like it. Number 9. The Vote Blocker. The vote blocker is the last advantage in the category of those that I dislike. In fact, given the right situation, such an advantage that could be found at the merge and secretly play to disadvantage another person could actually be very neat. But this is heroes versus healers versus hustlers, and it was pretty bad how they pulled it off. Ran and Chrissy got a disadvantage on their tribe that made the receiver of the gift lose the vote at the immediate tribal council they attended. Devons, let me make this clear, on the other tribe, received this disadvantage, and when he opened the parcel the tribal expecting something good, he lost his vote with no way to escape it. Again, this follows the logic of Tony getting disadvantaged by people not even on the same island as him. It just shouldn't happen. At least Ryan and Chrissy were in the game, but the extortion advantage is a hell of a low bar to compare anything to on the offset. Devons, again, on the other tribe, was disadvantaged and didn't even know who was by. This turned him from being the swing vote to instead a forced 2-2 tie at the tribal council where Joe idles out Alan Ball. Both Alan and Ashley likely had Devon's vote, though, and it was a real punch in the gut to see them lose it despite trying to work their hardest to gain Devon's trust. If Devon isn't disadvantaged, Joe might have been voted out with an idol in his pocket. Devons might have been exposed for working with the heroes and betraying Desi and Joe, and in some weird timeline perhaps Alan Ball makes the merge. I don't know. All this was ruined by the fact production decided to penalise the losing tribe furthermore. And the worst part was, it wasn't even the worst advantage given out at the pre-merge of that season. Now, before anyone comments, yes, I haven't yet mentioned Season 39's vote blocker founded by Elaine Stott and used to vote out Jason at the 4-4 Tribal Council in the 6th episode of Island of the Idols. My reasoning is because I didn't want 2 vote blockers to be on this list as I felt that would appear confusing to viewers. Because of this, I decided to take the earliest version of this advantage, which, as stated, originated on Season 35 Heroes vs Healers vs Hustlers. That being said, if I was to rank Island of the Idols' attempt at the vote blocker, I would honestly put it at second or third place. It was great watching Elaine pull it from under her shirt and watching the opposing Vokai begin to break down into upset. I think it isn't too overpowered and achieves a similar result to a vote steal advantage, say, which we'll get to later. Being able to block a person's vote on the same tribe as you causes attention and potentially change the tribal council with an idle play or even two. Season 39's Vote Blocker is a great second life form for it and can be a very versatile disadvantage for future seasons to come. Number 8, the Reward Stealer. I'm going to preference this now that this advantage isn't bad or inherently unhealthy to Survivor, but it's such a waste of time. There is very little reason to actually have this in the season, except on the off chance someone is evil enough to use the reward stealer at the family visit and likely get booted directly afterwards. Now, don't get me wrong, stealing a reward, especially at the final few days, like Jay did when he got the ownership of the advantage, is probably nice for the contestant. They get to eat some food, relax, worry less about the game, but really that does not make for any entertaining content. Jay taking the power away from David for the final six reward really isn't a memorable moment. The advantage is so vanilla and by design won't do much to expand storylines or add tension for the episodes to come. An advantage, an extra vote, or something would lead to more interesting scenarios that could lead to bigger, more flashy strategic plays at Tribal Council. Adam Klein, who even got the reward around merged, said he was a super fan, and after reading the Vantage said it was bad. It's more annoying to him that he spent all the time looking for something, only for it to largely be a dud. Number 7. The 50-50 coin. Despite this list not having any hidden immunity idols or variations of them, I decided to include the 50-50 coin and legacy advantage because I felt they were unique enough advantages and recent enough to have different points that I would bring up with a standard idol. The coin is fine, and something that again helps with the overarching problem of too many people being immune to tribal councils. It creates the same buzz and excitement as an idol leading up to the tribal council, but could fall flat. Overall, I think it's fine. I wouldn't be too upset if they made its way into a future season, but there are flaws. Firstly is that it really seems to be no definitive rules about flipping the coin, except that it must be flipped onto the podium. This means you can flip it in the midair once and get it to land on immunity. The coin also has an even chance to do nothing, meaning a person could expose themselves as having an advantage and thus becoming a bigger target, as I explained in my meat shield video. And all this would happen because a person found a lesser advantage that flopped onto the wrong side. And that's kind of my problem with the 50-50 coin with me is why not just have an idol? I feel like the 50-50 coin needs to work with the fire token economy and can't be used on a regular season. If so, and a well liked person gets unlucky, then people will be outraged at the RNG based on the advantage. The likes of Russell Hantz and Rick Devens showed if you find enough idols, you can begin finding other idols easier as you know where to look. However, to people like these two, finding a coin rather than an idol takes away their risk of leaving camp for an hour or two and their skill of looking in the right places and decrease their chances of being immune from 100% of a standard idol to 50% with fire tokens. And as long as it's a fair price to the buyer, I feel the 50-50 coin works fine. Just on a standard season, I think it would be too finicky to be worthwhile. Number 6. The Legacy Advantage. I understand the idea of the legacy advantage, but it still doesn't mean I agree with it. The legacy advantage was first introduced in Survival Millennials vs Generation X when Jessica picked it off the ground when no one was looking during the marooning, and when she drew the black rock, willed it to Ken. Ken then played it at the final six only for it to be a complete letdown and only gave him immunity. The problem with the legacy advantage is it was worse than the hidden immunity idol in every conceivable way. It is largely forgettable and only offers immunity and one lock tribal council, decreasing the chance of it actually being useful. Game Changers tried to change the mechanics slightly so it could be played at the final 13 or 6 to offer some variance, and at least it was memorable that season, even only because Sarah Lucina is a badass. The legacy advantage is a really uninspiring twist, and when the big reveal happens, it's only for immunity, which, in an era with idols being so common, we are desensitized to. If this were to be a twist in Micronesia or Gabon, I could see it being more interesting. Production really want to have this hot potato idea going around, which is tough when the holder has no incentive to tell someone what it does until the actual days they can play it as an idle. Reworking the legacy advantage as something that is announced in the game at the remaining phase builds up excitement surrounding it tenfold. The legacy advantage also needs buff from an immunity to an immunity and an extra vote. This would be more fair to people like Sarah who outsmarted the current owners of the advantage, as well as rewarding loyal players with good social skills like Ken. After all, Survivor is a social game. With the requirement of it being played at the final 7, a person with a legacy advantage feels they can do actual damage, causing more chaos right before the final 6, all the while keeping it fair. Ultimately, the legacy advantage has legs to work off, but needs some tweaking to become a good advantage in my eyes. Number 5. Abstain to gain. In all actuality, I think this advantage is a fun thing to come out every while and again. It has a nice risk versus reward aspect to it, and really allows the owner to decide how they would like to use the advantage. It could be a fun advantage to hide in reward challenges like how they used to do, and with it requiring you to lose a vote to earn a bonus form, there's hardly any backlash of people considering it too overpowered. My main problem is that the advantage stems over several episodes to reintroduce viewers into it. It can therefore be difficult for someone more new to Survivor or more forgetful to wrap their head around an advantage which could take weeks between abstaining only to gain. Another problem again is that it gets outclassed by the standard extra vote. This is why I explained this type of advantage is only nice to see on a rare occasion. The extra vote is more simple, and even people that haven't watched Survivor in 10 or so years could easily surmount what it does. Again, it's not a bad advantage, but I feel as though it is outclassed. Number 4. Fire tokens. Despite fire tokens seeming like a crazy idea at the beginning, and Jeff making a very confusing response on ET Canada as to what the fire tokens do, as they played out, I like them. Granted, if they ever were to return, they would lose their mystique of what they were actually used for, which the winners and Winners at War had to confront. That being said, I think it's a trade-off that would be one to be enjoyable to watch, and instead of watching winners have to hopelessly work around what the tokens do, instead a potential newbie cast can begin day one plotting what to do with the fire tokens. I personally really like the fire tokens and think they offer an extra layer to the show never found it before. It finally allows people on the bottom to have bargaining chips they can give to people to fight their way to a better position. People are also more so incentivized to communicate with each other and try to team up to afford an advantage. Bequeathing of fire tokens allows for the social game to be even more present, and again allows for people making the social connections to gain tokens that can be used to get an advantage, rather than someone getting a lucky idol find, for example. My only reservation is that the fire tokens would have to be reworked to be situated in the game. I'm not a fan of Edge of Extinction. I think it removes the social factor and replaces it more with the physical factor, which Survivor shouldn't be about. A way I could see the advantages being introduced into a season without Edge of Extinction is potentially hiding them as per normal, but slapping a price tag onto them. For instance, you'd have to find an idol and then pay 3 fire tokens if you actually want to get it. It adds a whole nother identity to the game, which I think is missing. Another problem with fire tokens is their ending. For such a big twist in the season, in Winners at War, the ending kind of flamed out for me. There was no big finale, just a sudden announcement to Michelle that the 2 fire tokens she received would be her last night to use them, and after that they would become useless. I'd rather something like the person at the final 6 to have the most fire tokens wins an extra vote or something, and that would actually cause a reason for people to preserve their tokens and play more strategically, rather than what happened in Winners at War, where every single advantage available was bought. It shouldn't be on every season, but I would like to see the fire token economy make a return with hopefully more exciting twists and turns. Number 3. Safety without power. Safety without power, first introduced in Island of the Idols, is an advantage allowing people to leave tribal council, meaning that they cannot vote but cannot be voted for in exchange. The only time we've seen this in use, however, was at the final 10 of Winners at War, where Jeremy Combs got up and left. The safety without power advantage is definitely one that has grown on me, as seeing someone spring up and suddenly leave tribal, forcing chaos to ensue and names to be thrown around is amazing TV. I have no real problems with it, except I think a better version already exists of it. In an organisation called Survivor Unlimited, and the beginning in their 11th online season, Survivor France, filmed in the beginning of March the 31st, 2019, they introduced something called a pass ticket. What's shocking is this advantage was created months before Islands of the Idols debuted, and in my opinion, the pass ticket is better than Survivor US's own Safety Without Power. The ticket operates much like Safety Without Power, except the person instead can stay in tribal to witness things instead of leaving. I think this is better as the person who left tribal can still have their reactions shown as the votes are revealed, which could add a lot to the season rather than someone saying, I went to camp and waited for the others to return. Having Jeremy sit at the corner of the jury bench when he managed to escape tribal would have been far better in my opinion, as you can get his reactions to Sophie calling for a five-man meeting, Kim playing her idol, and the Tyson blindside. And trust me, rewatch the Bermuda Triangle's immunity challenges. Jeremy's facial expressions have been proven to be hilarious. Again, it's very similar to an idol, but I feel like switching up the formula in this case for someone to leave their seat at tribal and assume a position of safety without being able to vote before people even go up to cast their votes is something that's considerably unique in my opinion. Number 2. The extra vote. Despite being so simple, the extra vote is one of those advantages that really is a great idea to include on a season. It's an advantage people can turn the tides of the game without it being an immunity idol and risking advantage again and again. It's such a simple idea but a genius one. First introduced in season 30 when Dan won it in the auction, this was the first advantage that wasn't an idol in the game and had huge potential. The extra vote has been a head-on survivor introduced into seasons 30, 32, 36, and 38, but has seen various versions such as the abstain to gain vote as previously stated in pretty much every survivor in the 30s and winners at war. There have been different variants of it. One small mechanic change they put come season 36 Ghost Island is that the extra vote didn't need to be announced when it would be played and a person could choose to use it privately. This change made sense, as the Stela vote was far stronger and needed announced, and to balance things, it made sense for a person to be able to use an extra vote secretly. Moreover, with the influx of advantages exponentially starting in Game Changers, the extra vote needed a small buff as to retain some niche over the barrels of idols shoved down our throats at that time. The extra vote, despite being a small humble advantage, can be greatly utilised in a proper situation and is never too strong to be removed, but too weak to be useless like the reward stealer. And finally, number 1 on this list, steal a vote advantage. The Votesteal is an advantage first used by Stephen Fishback in Cambodia and has been used up to Sarah Lucina in Winners at War. This advantage is the best in my opinion because it's far more versatile and useful than an extra vote and creates a lot more TV drama. The Davids wouldn't have been able to get the numbers if David vs Goliath if Nick didn't have a steal a vote, and we wouldn't have had that fun panic scene between Allison, Dan, and Kara about who is going to get voted out. It's a strategic advantage that also has some advantages over an idol, such as disrupting a vote split and being able to guarantee majority in a 5-6 tribal council instead of having to hope and pray that your hidden immunity idol is for the correct person. The Votesteal has always resulted in fun tribal councils, and with its varying degrees of success, it can't be claimed to be too good in my eyes. Another thing I like about the Votesteal is that it requires special effort to achieve, which creates more good TV moments and enjoyment. Stephen Fishback in Cambodia needed to sacrifice immunity for it, and he didn't even know at the time what the advantage was for. With Sarah Lucina in Game Changers got hers by sneaking it into her shoe after a challenge where Michaela was too blind to see it underneath her sit-out bench. In David vs Goliath, Nick found it using a palm tree drawing and comparing it to a palm tree on the island, which matched it. And finally, in Winners at War, Sarah Lucina got another steal a vote, not before having to sneak it into an opposing tribe and pulling the advantage out of a torch. The steal a vote, unlike the 50-50 coin or extra vote, in my opinion, is worthy of these small extra tasks that create fun TV moments and vicariously build up characters. It lies here at number 1 because of its ability to cause fun tribal councils and allows for creative uses to yield the maximum benefits. To give my channel an advantage in the YouTube algorithm, make sure to subscribe with the notification bell on. I post every Wednesday and Thursday 6 PM BST time zone, but if you're forgetful, like me, having that little notification bell on won't hurt either. It'll notify you every time I upload so you can be one of the first people to watch my content. A like would also be appreciated and lets me know you guys are appreciating my content. Comment down below any feedback for future video ideas or your own list, and that also helps build up a community. I hope down the line to fully create it on this channel. Feedback also helps me improve my videos so that they work better for you all. Thanks for watching though, I've been Bandit, and peace.